part 2. Ready na kayo, guys? Ang first toy natin ay puzzle galing kay Maria Luisa Medina, OTRP. Parang sakto nga talaga to for school age, no? Kasi sila din yung age na serious talaga yung breakfast kasi yun yung mabilis bago pumasok sa school.
That makes me what, 8?
In what other ways sakto sa school age tong puzzle?
Mostly tina-target niya is the cognitive skill. So, nandyan yung problem solving. Kaya ba nilang i-plan kung ano yung uunahin nila when they make the puzzle? Kung yung outside ba muna or the inside. Target din ito yung working memory or yung ability to hold and recall the information and at the same time, apply it sa situation. For example, you're playing in a varsity team. Can you recall the rules of the game and at the same time, apply it? Itong mga cognitive skills na to, vital siya sa mga school age kids kasi it can be applied sa academics. So when they learn new concepts.
Very good nga yun sa age nila kasi nga school age. So sila yung pumapasok sa school, sila yung nagsastart na maraming natututunan. Unlike nung preschool, syempre basics pa lang, tas mas marami din yung playtime. May other skills pa ba kayong naiisip na pwedeng makatulong yung puzzle?
I think relevant din to mention the visual perceptual skills na pwedeng ma-develop with this toy. Specifically yung form closure, which in simple words is your ability to complete an incomplete picture in your mind. So, syempre, kailangan to for you to complete the puzzle kahit individual pieces pa lang sila. And then, another visual perceptual skill, yung spatial relations. So, being able to know where the puzzle pieces should be in relation to each other. Dapat ba this piece is on top of this is beside this, ganon. And then lastly, visual memory. So, pwede din na you show the kid the complete picture or the complete puzzle before letting him or her do it. And then test yung visual memory to see if maalala niya yung whole picture while doing the puzzle itself. Yung mga visual perceptual skills na to, they're useful for the kid at that age kasi they know how to read and write na. So, this toy can help further refine yung reading and writing nila. Syempre, to help them keep up din during school activities.
That's really true, no? Kasi, di ba, pagkakokopya na tayo sa school, usually you're looking at the board, dapat na-remember mo yung nakita mo, tapos magsusulat ka, kasi hindi naman pwedeng every letter, ganyan ang ganyan yung ulo mo, balik-balik. So, para mas maging fast yung writing, or even nga sa reading na pag may tinanong sa'yo na remember mo kung ano yung binasa mo visually. In other, ano pa din yung kagaya ng spatial relations and form closure, mas marami rin sila talaga na activities na kailangan na nila yun. So, alam na nila dapat kunyari yung left and right pag sinabi mo yung instructions, front and back, saan mo ilalagay yung mga gamit mo sa school. So, kunyari, yung desk mo maliit lang, alam mo na dito mo nilalagay yung pen mo kasi right-handed ka. Given that na marami tayong cognitive and visual skills para dito, how can we make it more difficult or challenging for yung kids natin?
One thing, puzzles are always more difficult kapag mas maraming pieces. Kasi bukod dun sa cognitive skills na there's a lot more things involved in the planning, a lot more difficult strategizing. Kung gagawa ka ng 1,000 pieces na starry night, yung dulo ba ng staple o unahin anong landmark gagamitin mo. And then, upgrade din ito kasi kapag mas maraming pieces, it gets a little bit frustrating. It will require us to be able to control our emotions better if ever nahihirapan na tayo. And then, we can also make it a lot more complicated. They can draw on it then before they make it into a puzzle. Tapos, we can also make it easier. Ganun din, babalik rin lang natin, we'll make it mas konti. And then, there are also puzzles that are self-correcting. Each piece will only fit one piece. Para siyang shape sorter in a puzzle form. It's only gonna fit one shape.
Nabanggit mo yung self-correcting. Baka pwede, on the contrary sa upgrade, pwede din yung ang cut lang is yung squares. So, mas difficult siya kasi pwede siya kahit kaninong itabi kasi square lang siya. Very flexible pala din tong puzzle kasi you can enjoy it as young as preschool, yung mga 4-piece, 2-piece puzzles lang natin. Yung usually may concept pa yung mama cow to the baby cow.
Yeah.
Even as adults, nag-enjoy tayo dun sa sobrang daming pieces na puzzle. Yeah.
Can I add, connect ko dun? Kasi pag smaller siya, mas fine yung kailangan mo na grasp dyan. So, for school age kids, important na ma-develop yung fine motor skills nila. So, manipis na nga yung cereal box, tapos maliit pa siya. So, upgrade na rin yun.
May naisip din ako in terms of that. School age kids, andun na sila sa pag-transition into working together. Since mahirap nga na buuhin na mag-isa lang kung masyadong madami or maliliit yung pieces, they can build it together. Meron na tayong aspect dun of planning and organizing with other people. Parang they know how to build strategies or plans together. Add ko rin pala, in terms of downgrade, yung labas ng cereal box, gawin na lang natin parang border para may landmark na agad.
We can add nga din sa likod ng pattern, di ba? Yung ibang poses, if-fit mo na lang yung piece na nagmamatch dun sa outline.
Nice.
Yung downgrades kasi natin, it's not really to make it easy, but it's more of for the challenge to fit just right for them to be encouraged to do it again. When they do it again, even if it gets a little more difficult, they will be motivated to do it kasi they've experienced success in doing it the first time.
Just Right Challenge. Our next toy was submitted by Chloe Alanique. It's a string heart.
Okay.
Parang common nga siyang nakikita din na tool for physical dysfunctions as well as yung mga may mental health conditions. Ano kaya yung mga possible goals na makakatulong tong string art?
You mentioned kanina, it's usually found din sa treatments natin for MH consumers. The activity itself is therapeutic kasi it's an output-based activity. Tapos at the same time, you maintain focus on something. Parang transferring your energy into something productive.
Very good nga siya na parang leisure activity, no? Kasi yung step mismo, hindi siya sobrang complicated. Ulit-ulit lang siya. So it's not that demanding. But there's still some creativity kasi you can do your own designs, your own patterns. So parang pwede rin siya na expression of the self. Besides leisure, what else can this activity be used for?
So in addition to yung patients with mental health conditions, pwede rin patients with physical conditions because this toy challenges our fine motor skills. We can use it, for example, stroke patients who need to improve their pinch grasp or yung pag-carry nila ng string around the nail.
Besides nga stroke patients, I remember them doing this sa may mga diabetes na nahirapan na to feel with their hands kasi you have to watch your hands closely habang mo ginagawa. So you're not just relying on the feeling.
Sensations.
No? Besides that, meron pa ba kayong ibang ideas?
Since this activity is output-based, yung mga magagawa nilang products, we can sell it. So, para may work participation na din, which is very fit for the adult age group kasi yun yung primary occupation nila. Aside from that, pwede din siyang gamiting activity sa pre-vocational training.
And so, nabanggit mo yung pre-vocational skills training. That's a big part ng ginagawa din ng OTs. Can you tell us more about that?
So, yung pre-vocational training, ang goal nito is to prepare and target yung needed skills and behavior para makapag-work effectively yung individual sa kanyang chosen work setting. So, traditionally, it's for adolescents. Pero ngayon, ginagamit niya yung pre-vocational for those na wala pang work experience. Technically, piniprepare niya by targeting yung mga soft skills or yung interpersonal skills such as yung communication, flexibility, leadership, teamwork, and yung time management.
Pwede rin to actually na magamit yung principles ito for people naman na who wants to go back to work. Not only for adolescents nga na mag-prepare pa lang for work, but also for mental health patients. We introduce yung mga activities kagaya nitong string art to help them na mabalik yung skills kagaya nga ng mga nabanggit kanina na cognitive skills or yung mga fine motor skills natin. Apart from MH na patients, pwede rin to kagaya ng nabanggit kanina ni Andrea for yung mga patients natin na may physical disabilities naman or may physical difficulties. Kasi nga, it still involves yung manual work. So, yung mag-move ka with your hands or pwede yung may mga reaching pa din. Given na adaptable yung activity, ano ba yung mga masasuggest nyo na upgrade and downgrades for it?
For upgrade, nyari ginamit niyang shape is heart. Gawin natin mas complicated, pwedeng star, more edges, tapos dagdagan din ng pins para madami siyang dadaanan pa. Mas complicated yung kailangan niyang gawing movements. For downgrade, mas simple na shape, mas simple na figures, less na pins. For modification naman, instead of pins, pwedeng nails yung gamitin kung mas available yun sa'yo.
Kung gagawa ka nga ng bigger version, baka better yung nails, no? Kasi parang mas visible siya. Tapos pwedeng mas maraming string yung ikot mo. Pero in terms of safety, I think important lang din na i-note natin. Siyempre kasi yung nails or pins, pareho silang pointy. Tapos pwede kang masugatan. And especially if you're gonna do this sa may physical or mental health na condition, baka maging mas prone sila for yung wounds. So, pwede natin siya palitan actually with yung, since cardboard naman yung pagtutusukan natin, yung mga wood na pegs, kung hindi available yun, they just take yung mga chopsticks. Tapos, yun yung tinatasahan nila para lang mag-sharpen konti yung dulo. Tapos, yun yung itutusok mo. So, it's a little safer.
In addition to those, pwede rin yung push pins. And then, pwede rin, do you guys, I don't know what you call yung pin na may head, tapos may dalawang ganon.
Called the split pin.
Yun.
Split pin.
Pwede din yun if you want to further reduce the risk of puncture wounds.
Maganda nga yung split pin kasi wala siyang sharp edges. You can also adjust yung height kasi, di ba, ikaw ang magtutugtog. Any additions pa for this toy?
Additional upgrade, rather other than complicating yung ating pattern, we can also add more color. Kunwari, if you are targeting na magka-copy ka ng design, pag mas madaming color, mas mahirap, like they have to put it diagonally yung red or the other color.
Parang mas interesting din after actually kapag ka maraming colors. So mas marami ka ring possibilities ng patterns na pwedeng gawin. Thank you, Chloe, for your string art. Sobrang creative talaga. Our last toy for this episode is by Nessa Peña. It's a tic-tac-toe.
Simple lang.
Ang dami nga niyang possibilities kasi yung base niya, parang ang dami mong pwedeng laruin.
Same thoughts kasi parang hindi lang tic-tac-toe yung pwedeng gameplay dito. Pwedeng
Connect 4.
ibang items.
Pwede.
Yeah, pwede yung parang connect 4 or 4 in a row. And pwede rin actually na other objects ata yung ilagay natin besides yung paperclip kasi ang laki pa nung spaces. O
Pwedeng
baka
ping pong balls. Or like yung sa previous episode natin, yung bottle caps, kung hindi available yung ping pong balls. Pwede din siyang activity modification, like flat cardboard, tapos may ganun din separator. So since for older adults naman siya, to maintain yung mga range of motion or yung lawak ng panggalaw, and the other client factors like eye-hand coordination, pwedeng instead of yung paper clips, pwedeng yung mga handbags or anything heavy, tapos ito throw nila. So it's a form of exercise na din.
Since you guys mentioned making it a little bigger, pwede rin lakihin na sobra, like human board game style. Not only yung cognitive yung matatarget, pero yung physical din.
So, kapag ganon, kung gagawin natin na parang yung mga modification na medyo bigger, tapos yung sila na mismo yung pamato, alam mo yun, they can do it as a group activity. Mga older adult na Christmas parties natin, may mga pa-games, tic-tac-toe, pero tao yung pyesa. It can already be a competitive game. Nandun na yung social participation natin. Kasi kapag older adults na tayo, yan na yung phase in our social development where we keep close to the people we love or the people we want around us sa end stages of our life. So, it can be a bond time. So, parang we went full circle sa first part nung episode natin na to. We talked a little bit about bonding time with yung parent and yung kid. So, ngayon, the kid all grown up now can do the bonding time with the parent.
It can also be yung lolo and apos nga pwede. Lalo na ngayon na bawal lumabas yung ating mga senior. Hindi sila pwedeng mag-gather ng sama-sama.
Bawal po
Pwedeng-
mag-Christmas party, Hindi po pwede. Pero bigyan ko sa YouTube muna. Thank you.
May iba pa ba kayong naisip na skills na kailangan or pwedeng ma-target?
Apart dun sa range of motion, nun, natatarget din yung strength, lalo na kung tossing yung mga gameplay na gagawin natin. Tapos, balance na rin if ever na medyo malayo siya. Siyempre, older adults, added precaution din for them na at risk for falls. Tapos, siguro fine motor skills kung maliliit yung items na gamit mo. Like yung mga bottle caps, lalo itong paperclip na to, for pinch na rin siya.
Tapos baka may tendency for some adults kasi na medyo nanginginig na. So that might be a good activity para nga ma-maintain nila yung paggamit nila ng hands nila. May iba pa ba kayong skills na naiisip na pwedeng ma-challenge?
We haven't talked about maintaining yung cognitive skills. Do you guys notice that when people grow older, parang yung mga nagiging hobbies nila, mahjong, okay? Tangit, mga word search,
Bingo!
crossword, bingo,
Solitaire.
exactly. So, these are things na you don't even know, but you're actually exercising your brain to think, to, eto na naman ako, sa strategy, sa planning, and coordinate. So like, what you're gonna do in order to come up with these. Tapos, di ba, kapag older adults tayo, yung mga long-term memories natin are also better. So, this is like far from the tic-tac-toe na, no? Pero I mentioned kasi yung mga crosswords natin and stuff. So, if you notice, yung grandparents natin are very good at it. Kasi long-term memory is a lot more strengthened in adulthood. Kaya nga, yung short-term natin, medyo nababawasan. So, if nakakalimutan na ni Lola at ni Lolo, nasaan nakalagay yung pustiso nila, pasabi na lang kung nasaan. Tapos, long-term memory, pwede rin ma-exercise here. Kasi I'm sure they've already encountered tic-tac-toe before. And it's something na they won't be hesitant to try. Even though it looks like a leisure activity, we're actually maintaining a lot of different functions.
So it's really good for them na ganito lang yung activity. It's simple, but at the same time, it's very adaptable din dun sa skills na meron sila. So, thank you ulit kay Maria Luisa, kay Chloe, and kay Nessa for submitting their videos for this episode.
If you like our content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
If you have any comments or suggestions, comment down below or you could send us an email.
Yes, and don't forget to tag us in Facebook and Instagram and use the hashtag ToyBoxPH.
Maraming salamat po for watching our videos. Stay tuned for more content. Bye!
Bye!
Bye!